Nice to see everyone's face from up here. This is good. This is a great position, you know. You've got to smile. You see all these wonderful people here. It's really good. We're in Exodus 15, and as Stuart said a bit earlier, what we're up to in the story is that these Israelites who have been slaves and have just got out of Egypt finally, and they get to this wall of water. They can't go forward, they can't go back, they can't go anyways because Pharaoh and all these Egyptian nasty forces and chariots and everything are right behind them. Then what happens? Who can tell me? Wendy's doing it. This happened. Let's have some words. What does this mean? The water parted. Okay, the amazing miracle of them being able to get through and cross it over into the other side, which is the beginning of their journey. But the thing is, they didn't know where they're going. And they didn't know how they're going to get there. And some questions come up along the way, things like where am I going to get food from? Where am I going to get water from? And God, we don't know what's happening. Actually, they didn't even say that to God. Moses, we don't know what's happening. They weren't used to talking to God. They were only used to having a leader like Pharaoh, who's mean and nasty. And so they weren't quite used to actually going to the true leader, who is God. And so the next best was Moses. And so they start calling out. Anyway, we're not quite up to that bit. But before they do anything, can we have the next picture, please? So they're at the other side of the sea, and they're excited. They've just seen the Egyptian forces drown in the water because God has brought the water back because they're not supposed to be there. This was a miraculous opening for the Israelites only, not for anyone else. And we're going to have somebody with a very interesting voice. We're going to hear some Jewish singing. Well, we guess it's something like what they would have done when they sang this song in Exodus 15. And we're going to hear this chapter being read in a way that I can't do it. And is better, I think. So can we have the video, please, Dave? Hang on.
Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood firm like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. In your unfailing love you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall upon them. By the power of your arm they will be as still as a stone, until your people pass by, O Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, your hands established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. Miriam sang to them,
"Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea."
Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Merah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Merah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying,
"What are we to drink?"
Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. He said,
"If you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you."
Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water.
All of that excitement, isn't it? I mean, to have lived through that kind of miracle, you think that would set you up for life and that you would never, ever, ever have a doubt again. But the human. And of course, once you start getting hungry or thirsty, your stomach takes over and your faith can go right down. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. So this is the first test. And in the 3 chapters we're going to be kind of basically covering, and we're not giving every single detail of the story, but the broad strokes. This is the first of 3 tests, and there's 4 tests actually. They needed water. That's a strong test, isn't it? So they screamed out to go Moses, not God, Moses. And here's Moses. I mean, he's a godly man, but he's still just a man. I mean, he can't just provide water. Who does he have to go to? God. He's the one who goes to God. He's the one who, if you think about it, he grew up in the Pharaoh's palace. He's used to going to Pharaoh. I picture Moses as a little kid crawling up on Pharaoh's knee. Read me a story, Grandpa. You know, that's how he grew up. He grew up in the posh places. How did the people grow up? They were slaves. They had no way of going to Pharaoh. They were slaves. So when it comes to going to God, they're still too scared to go directly to God. What might God do to them if they went? We know about Pharaoh. Well, God could do more. God's more powerful. They'd seen the power. So they didn't go to God. They went to Moses and they complained against him. And when they complained against Moses, Moses cried out to God. And then God gave an instruction. See that piece of wood over there? I want you to throw it in the water. They come to water, but they couldn't drink it. When that piece of wood went in the water was fine again, and they could drink it. They had water. And then God gave them even more water. A little bit later, they came to a place with lots of springs and palm trees, and they could camp around it. So God answered the prayer. Even though they didn't come straight to him, Moses did, and God answers the prayer. So we're going to see that there's a bit of a pattern going on here. I'm also going to show you a couple of pictures of me along my journey, because I want us to relate these things to our lives. First may not have been your biggest test, because we happen to live in a country where it's pretty easy to get water, and most of us, not saying all of us, have had food, even if it hasn't been everything that we wanted. But, it still could be that food or water is a big issue. But can we go to the next picture, please? There's me.
Oh.
Do I still look the same?
Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah.
So I was 11 then, and I'm glad I was smiling for the camera, whoever took the photo. And it was just after a friend's birthday party. And I'd just become a Christian. So when I just became a Christian, my first test was going home to Mum and Dad. Because what was I going to face? I was pretty sure I knew I could easily be afraid. So this is a big fear test for me, because they weren't going to like the fact that I was a Christian, and that's exactly what happened. My father was very, very angry, and he walked around and wouldn't talk to me for ages, because this was a terrible, terrible thing to have happen in his family. And my mother went quiet. So people do it in different ways, don't they? And so then she decided she was going to present the next tests. And so she started off with all these lies here and there. It was all very sneaky and subtle, and all these other things, and all of the nasty words. So for me, it was going to be a battle of fear and a battle of discernment, because I had to at that age, 11, discern between what they're saying to me and all of the other relatives, what they're saying to me, and what I was beginning to learn was truly God. And for me, the greatest gift was being given a Bible. I still treasure it. A Bible is such an amazing resource. It's God's wonderful book. And because I had the Word of God, even though they didn't want me to read it, it was given to me by a Sunday school teacher, so they couldn't really burn it or throw it out. And I read it with a torch in my bed, so they couldn't see the light under the door and all that. But this was what showed me the way that God guided what was true. You see, so my test was about fear, not believing lies, and standing on what was true in God's Word. So I still absolutely treasure that. When I look back, I can say that God did things by the Spirit too, but I'm just, I didn't probably put it in those words at that stage. But that was that first test, first series of tests. Okay, let's move on back to our story. In the next chapter, we're going to meet the next test. So I'm going to read little bits of this. First of all, I'm going to read the first 7 verses. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they'd come out of Egypt. So here they are, probably 6 weeks or so later. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. All over again. The Israelites said to them, If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you've brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. And that's not the only time they say those words. Every time they don't know what's going to happen, they get to the point of saying that or something like it. The Lord heard all this, of course. The Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven. In other words, I'm going to give them food, don't worry. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they'll follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. I mean, we can look at it now and think, well, it can't be anybody else that did that to the sea. But when you're right in the middle of a desperately difficult situation where you haven't got food to eat, or at least the food that you want, sometimes I know I can get a little bit antsy or, certainly not comfortable, and that can, make me feel a bit moody or a bit this, that or the other if I haven't got food that I'm comfortable with, that I'm familiar with, and that I can comfortably eat. So it's a temptation for us to, give up, and yet God had a plan. He was preparing to feed them, and he was going to feed them in a miraculous way. And so that's exactly what happened. And in the morning, there was this white stuff on the ground. They said it was looked like coriander seeds. Has anyone ever got coriander seeds? Yeah? So there's something like that, and that it tasted like wafers with honey on them, or in them. So, you might get sick of it, I suppose, I don't know, but it was something that people could eat, and people enjoyed eating. So there they are gathering it, and every day they just gather enough. It said that for each person get an oma, which equals 2 litres. So if you think of 2 milk cartons, however you buy your milk, or a 2 litre carton, that's the amount that is enough food for one person. So, what's that?
I said, wow.
So that, if you have that, obviously it can give you all of the proteins and the vitamins and all of the other things that you need, because God had made something that was well balanced. It wasn't coriander seed. It was just that they described it as being something like that. So the people had that for a while, and then in verse 11, they started grumbling again. And they started grumbling again against who? Moses and Aaron. Okay. So they said much the same things. And then the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. Well, at least he hopes so. He should know. That evening, quail came. Little birds, quail. They covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. And when the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. And then he goes into telling them how much they were going. So this picture is of them gathering the manna, which they called it, in the morning, and the other was this picture doesn't have the quails, but you can imagine the quails coming, and they took them and then ate them as well. So they had two kinds of food, if you like, two flavours, and that was good. I'm going to read a little bit from the end of the chapter. Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer, 2 litres, of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for generations to come. Now that's really interesting because manna didn't keep overnight. But in this case, it did. And you see, normally they gathered enough just for one day, because if they kept it overnight, which some people try doing, I don't want to go out and gather it again tomorrow morning. It didn't keep, except that if they gathered twice as much on the 6th day and they kept it overnight and they weren't supposed to gather on the 7th day, the Sabbath, then it didn't go bad. You see, so God's in all of this. So if you follow what God said, then you're not going to run into food going bad. You're not going to run into not having enough. You're not going to run into having too much. If you follow the instructions, you will be okay. Everything will work. And so the Lord did command about this manna to be put inside the temple when they got one. They didn't have one yet, tabernacle, but in front of the box that was going to be the Ark of the Covenant, which they already had the box, but not all the other stuff. And, there's a little comment. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years. Some kids would have grown up there and they'd never tasted anything else. And then they would get to the age of 40 or whatever, and then they'd find out, there's other things to eat too. And the manna stopped when they no longer needed it. It was another miraculous intervention by God. Amazing. Okay, next picture. That's me again. I was a university student at this stage. And I know that Stuart took the photo because I've got his red scarf on. And it suddenly reminded me, he told me to put his red scarf on for a bit of colour in the picture, But there I am. I'm a university student in the snow. We went to university in northern New South Wales on the tablelands in Armidale. And you might have seen on the news that all that northern tablelands area got a lot of snow recently. Did anyone pick that up? Yeah. Well, we did because, that's in the area where Stuart comes from. And, yes, I can remember we just made snowmen, big ones, before that photo was taken and the snow was still on the ground for, this would be either 5 days to a week. So it stayed there. And so this is the last of it there. That's at the university main building, and then Stuart came to visit. So I've totally forgotten about that picture. But going to university, in response to what God had told me to do, which university to go to and all that sort of thing, the big question was, how am I going to pay the bills? So it was money. Because I had zero support from my parents, and yet I trusted that God would pay. And I think it was around $112 in my bank account. And by Friday in the first week, I had to pay $600 and something just for residence fees. So what was going to happen? Some of you have heard the story. Every single day, under my door came envelopes full of money. Most of the times, I had no idea who gave them to me. I finally found out that a girl who became one of my closest friends and still is, was giving regularly because before she'd met me, God had told her to do it. She'd seen me in the distance and God said to give this amount of money to her. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. I still think it is. So, but I still remember it came to Easter, we kind of provided $600 and whatever it was dollars for the first week residence fees. I could pay everything on time. I never missed a payment, and this went on for 4 years. And by the way, when Stuart saw me then, I still hadn't told him that I didn't have any money. I would not tell him because I didn't want him to feel obliged. So he didn't know until we were getting married. That's what I told him, a lot of things. But, yeah. Easter was coming. And there was an Easter camp, a Christian camp. I really, really, really wanted to go to it, but I did not have $5. I mean, often it was I didn't have 13 cents to pay for the bus to get back to university. So what did I do? I went to God. He was my leader. He was my guide. He's the one who promised to pay. So I prayed to God, and then always, somebody, a student or a lecturer or somebody or other came by, stopped. Do you want to lift back to uni? Yes, please. And always got back in time. But this $5, I didn't know where I was going to get $5 from. And I prayed, and it came in the most unexpected way. My grandmother, who never, ever sent me anything else, sent me $5 in an Easter card. I mean, she wasn't a believer at this stage, and she put it in an Easter card, $5. She said, I thought you might like this. The only time she's ever done that. The only time I needed it. And, just God has a myriad of ways. This is only just one example. But I learned in those 4 years, God is the provider. If he says he's going to do something, this is what I want, where I want you to go, and this is what I want you to do. And if God says that, you can be sure he's going to pay. Then trust him. He did pay. All that time in 4 years. And then, of course, we have together seen that when we've been involved in overseas work and missions and all that kind of thing. Okay, back to the story. Okay, we've got the third and the fourth tests in chapter 17. In chapter 17, we get another time when the Israelites are complaining that they don't have good water to drink. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin. They went from place to place. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water. And so they quarrelled with who? Moses, and said, give us water to drink. Moses said, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? Moses was simply leading them in obedience to the Lord. The Lord was the real leader. The Lord is the one you've got an issue with. So we've got to remember that if you do have an issue with what's going on in your life, you go straight to the boss. Don't deal with the little people like Moses.
Kathleen.
Or Kathleen. Kathleen's very, very, very little compared with Moses. So they grumbled, and then they went through the same story. Why did you bring us up out of Egypt? Da, 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 all we've heard all that again. And Moses cried out to the Lord, and he said, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. You feel Moses' exasperation. Here he is. He's giving everything he can possibly give, and the man is over 80. And they are not seeing the giving that he's doing and the care that he's taking for them. And he's trying to do what God wants. And then, if it pleases the people, it's all going to end up in a shemozzle because they don't even know who they're following, what they want, and it's all, they're thinking it's a mess. The Lord answered. Of course, he always did answer. He always answered Moses. So he told him what to do. He said, walk on ahead of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff, the stick, with which you struck the Nile back in Egypt when there were plagues going on, and he had to do that, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock. Unusual way to be thinking of getting water. Strike the rock and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah because they just mean, quarrelling, that sort of thing. And they tested the Lord there, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Moses knew the Lord was there. I mean, he wouldn't have been on this journey otherwise. But the people sometimes let their own hunger, thirst, emotions, and all the rest of it interfere and get in the way. They're just tests. And they could let go of trusting in the Lord. So that's test number one. They wanted water. God answered spectacularly. He struck the rock and the water came out of the rock. As I said, an unusual way to get water. But God said to do it, and that's what happened. And the fourth test in this series is the test of conflict. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites. I think this is a really hard test. Maybe for some people it's not the hardest. I don't know which is the hardest. And then Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Now I have to say the Amalekites were really, 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 really nasty people. They used to attack the weakest. I kind of think of that when I see pictures of Russia, bombing kindergartens and hospitals and places where people are very vulnerable, not places where there's soldiers all ready to fight. But bombing the weak, that's the Amalekites. And God was against them because they were against him. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, but there was another part to this story. Moses had to lift up his two hands. And he went up on the top of a hill overlooking the battle. Moses was down there with the swords and all that sort of thing. Moses was up there. And what are the hands doing? They're praying hands. It says he's lifting them up to the throne of the Lord. And without that happening, the battle down here with the swords wasn't going to go anywhere. And he took two guys up with him. One was Aaron, his brother, and one was another guy called her. And they had to help lift up his hands because Moses, of course, dropped them. I mean, I can't keep mine up there for longer than, a few minutes. They get really sore. So these guys had to help by doing that. But it was a symbolic action of praying for this battle. And every time the hands dropped, then the Israelites were losing. And every time the hands were up, the Israelites were winning. Well, you know who won in the end? It was the Israelites. Why? Because Moses was praying, interceding. That was his job at this point. And God answered. He followed God's instructions. And God answered me. Every single one of these tests, God had a way already worked out in his mind of how he was going to provide for them. Okay, the next picture. You've got us again. And Stuart's there. At this stage, Stuart was quite ill. He looks all right, doesn't he? But he was quite ill. I was also not too good there. And I must have both had I'd had a haircut that looks awful. But anyway. Do you know where we are? Ethiopia, thank you. Joseph, Solomon, Alamu, Waldemarin, which means son of Mary. And these are some of our students. And they came out to the airport to see us off. It wasn't, they're smiling for the camera, except Solomon. And yet it was a sad occasion. And we had had conflict. We'd gone there to teach, and that's what we were doing. And there were a whole lot of students that wanted to pack that minibus to come out to the airport to send us off. But I can't remember how many ended up coming. It might have been just these 4 guys. And there was conflict from some people at the top somewhere, and it was unjust, absolutely unjust, unfounded accusations. And the students knew that. They could see what was going on. We didn't tell them. They saw, and they could see it. And it was really, really very, very, very severe stress. Not from teaching. The teaching was wonderful. Not from interacting with normal Ethiopian people. No, that was great. But it was unexpected conflict. I don't need to say who from. But it was totally unjust, and the stress affected us both. And Stuart was the doctor in Ethiopia, the mission doctor, just said, I can't see any way that this stress, it's unjust, he knew it was unjust, is going to change. And he said, this is wrong, you can't just keep going on. And Stuart's health was such that it appeared that it was probably his heart condition. And he said, well, if you have another heart attack and you're in Ethiopia, there's nothing they can do. There's the Addis Cardiac Hospital that is Bentonite, but actually they can't do anything. You've got to go to a Western country. And he told me that I wasn't good either, and I could have heart issues too. So this was a conflict that we had not anticipated, and it was all for no reason. It was all absolutely stupid. But then when I look back, you sort of think, God, what's going on? That's what we were saying, and the teaching term hadn't quite finished. Can't we at least finish the term? No, it was urgent that we get out for our own health's sake. That's what the doctor said, and he arranged for us to go. And he was being kind to us. But, at the time, you think, well, where's God? What's he doing in this? What's happening? Why is this happening? And I think it took a while for us to work out some things. One of them was that he opened the way after we had recovered, and there was no long-term effect from that we know of. But God opened a way for us to be able to go to more countries. And that was another story. But, and we were thinking, oh, God, what are we going to do? Because the mission couldn't work out. The doctor suggested we go short-term, 3 months at a time, no more than that, so that we're under health supervision. But they couldn't work out what to do with us. So, okay, God, what are we supposed to do? You are still calling us to this. And so one day at Kingston Beach, I said to God, I'm just thinking about this person, this man that I had a conversation with back, years ago in Cambridge over a question about in the book of Ezekiel. I mean, it's a random conversation. You think, why am I remembering this? And I just said to God, how is this guy? How is this little family, his wife and his 2 boys, how are they getting on? Next day I got an email from him. How would he get my email address? I don't have his. And he said, I'm just thinking about that conversation about the book of Ezekiel. Same conversation. He said, I want to know how you're going. So I explained our situation. He said, okay, you write to this man. Here's his email address. Send your CV. He will tell you what to do. We did that. Didn't know where in the world this guy was. Happens that he was Australian somewhere. But he said, just send it. We did. And within 24 hours, we had invitations to go to 7 countries. That's not normal. God was making a way where there seemed to be no way. And we look back and we can say the foundation was formed in Ethiopia, where we went through struggles, where we learned a huge amount, which equipped us to be able to start a new mission, which we did. I didn't know how to do it. And that's still in operation, but it's in the process of winding down. And we learnt so much. You see, God even turned that, so he knew the conflict. And I can't say that he caused the conflict, but he used that conflict for good. And years later, when we were in England, in the library, there were some dark-skinned people who came in, and I suddenly thought, these were Ethiopians. I know they look different from other Africans. And I just went up to this woman and I said, where are you from? She said, Ethiopia. I said, we were there. And then I told her my name because she asked. Oh, she said, are you Kathleen Rochester? Oh, I must tell everybody else here, you're really Kathleen Rochester. And so she got all these other people with her, and they were all excited because they actually met me. And I thought, goodness me, the word had got round of the good that we had done in that time that we were there. I thought, wow, we were there not quite a year. That's not very long. And that was just so lovely and amazing, and we were still in touch for a while. The next one, last one. At the end of all of these sections here, Moses built an altar. And an altar that's just really a way of, we wouldn't do it like that these days, but building an altar is a way of thanking God and a way of trying to remember what God has done. And he built an altar at the end of chapter 17, verse 15, and he called it, "The Lord is my banner." And what does that mean to us? I'm not a football player, which is probably pretty obvious. But, when you see sports teams, they often have banners or flags or something that's a symbol of their team, don't they? Apart from their uniform. And you've got people waving it, or you've got girls on the side in America doing their dancing or whatever in the right colours. But if you're under this team, you're under their banner. Isn't that right? So you stand and gather under that banner. It's a bit like that, where the Lord is our banner. Through all the journeying and through all of the difficulties, whether it's water, whether it's money, whether it's conflicts or anything else, fears of what people will say, all the rest of it, we are standing under the banner that says, "I am the Lord's." The Lord is my banner. And if we stand under that banner, we belong to his team. He is the one who is our leader. He is the one that we follow because we know that he is going to bring success. He is the one who always wins. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to be on his team.